The United States and Iran trading multiple rounds of strikes over the weekend. Iran launching missile and drone attacks on U.S. military facilities across several Gulf states, including Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Oman, and Jordan, while warning there could be more incidents in the Strait of Hormuz. CENTCOM forces responding with a new round of strikes targeting Iranian military sites late last night. So all of this continuing overnight. Oil prices reacting to this. President Trump confirming that the Strait of Hormuz remains open. Watch.
CENTCOM came out this morning and said the Strait of Hormuz is open. Which is it, Mr. President?
It's open. We bombed the hell out of them last night. They're very, very evil and sick people. We had meetings with them for the last. They agreed to a deal yesterday, a perfect deal for us. No nuclear, no this, no that, no nothing. They gave up everything. And then after that, they left the room. And then within an hour, they launched a drone at a ship.
Joining me now, Heritage Foundation Center for National Security, Brent Sadler. Brent, where are we this morning?
Well, I think there's quietly in the background some working at a technical level and low diplomatic levels to try to open up channels of dialogue. That's fine, and that's the negotiation. But what's also going on, and also can't be let up because the pressure is what the Iranians respond to, is the military strikes. And the majority of those are focused in around the Straits of Hormuz, Bandar Abbas, all the way to Chabahar, major ports in the Arabian Sea coast, points from which the Iranians have been launching these attacks against shipping, all throughout the previous ceasefire. So the pressure needs to keep up, at the same time keeping the door open to negotiations, but they can't be conditional. The military activity has to continue unabated.
All right, so let me ask you this, because if you look at it, some of the deep dive reporting that's been done about kind of what's happening within the Iranian regime right now, there are so many different factions because we took out basically 3 layers of leadership. It's not just about Khamenei, it's about everyone that surrounded him and underneath him. When you take that much leadership out, and these people are now gone, those that are left don't really have not the experience, but also they're in different sections. It's almost like you've got the IRGC on one side, and then you've got the politicians on the other. And one side is saying, we're going to negotiate with America. The other faction, IRGC, is striking against America. That seems to be what we're witnessing kind of play out in real time, Brett.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the design. The president took out the first and the second tier. The third tier of leadership's looking to be not any better. So perhaps we need to dig down deeper to the fourth and fifth tier of leadership. But it's really the IRGC that's the problem here, and their muscle on the streets in the form of the Basij. So if there's going to be an opportunity for a new, fresher view regime in Tehran, which is a big ask, I know, but one in which is more responsible to the Iranian people and one not a threat to American lives and interest, this is the path that's going to have to be kind of hoed before we get to the end of it. And again, if this regime, these leaders in IRGC are not going to be willing to play ball effectively and hold to a promise, then it's time to look another tier down.
All right. Well, and certainly we need to be standing with our Gulf allies. I mean, they were going after, in those countries I mentioned in your introduction, I mean, those are U.S. military sites they're going after. They're going after our U.S. Troops, to be clear here, so that's understood. I want to ask you about China, because China renewed its rejection of the South China Sea arbitration ruling on its 10th anniversary. China's reaffirmation comes in direct response to a joint statement by the U.S. and other allies reaffirming their commitment to maintain a free and open region. Maria spoke to House China Select Committee Chairman John Molnar on Sunday Morning Futures, assessing China's threat to global security and to open water. Watch this.
What are your observations about what China is doing right now?
Well, I think they're doing their usual thing. They're trying to intimidate. They're trying to threaten neighbors and show off their military capabilities. Their goal is to have 1,000 nuclear warheads by 2030. And we've seen them doing these kinds of tests more frequently. I think that they're trying to show that they're the dominant power in the region, and it's a threat to the Indo-Pacific. It's a threat to the world. And so I think it's one of those areas where we need to push back.
Is this a message to the U.S. that they have the capability to reach the continental United States?
I think it's also a message to our allies and friends throughout the Indo-Pacific. When you consider that they're trying to intimidate and threaten the region, not to mention all their activities with respect to Taiwan, we see them becoming increasingly aggressive and threatening to their neighbors and people throughout the region.
You know, and Brent, Xi Jinping also recently stated that China's backing and friendship with North Korea isn't changing. You know, we had Gordon Chang with us the last hour, and he said, look, make no mistake here, China wants to keep on going. I mean, they want to own the water. You know, if they could go to Hawaii, they would. And that we need to be on high alert, continuing high alert because of what China is possibly capable of in the South China Sea.
No, the Chinese threat is very real, and it's actually here amongst us right now, from secret police stations to elite capture influence operations with, you know, if you look at some of the elected members in California that have recently been uncovered to be carrying a lot of Chinese Communist Party water. So it's a repeat. It's a united front effort the Chinese have used across the world, even in allies like Australia have suffered under this. And the Chinese regime, this Chinese Communist Party, is expansionistic, and they are undeterred. Their behavior of the military, area that I'm very familiar with from my operational days, the way in which they engage is not one of, you know, a peaceful posture. It's actually very aggressive, and it's changed in the last few years, clearly undeterred. Even as so much as to now claim that the Bantanes Islands between Taiwan and northern Philippines, which has always been part of the Philippines, is also theirs. A similar pattern of behavior that started in 74 to their taking away from southern Vietnam to, of course, the Spratly Islands and ongoing building of these large man-made island garrisons. So they will not stop. They are a communist regime, and inherent in that is an insecurity that's going to drive them to ever more behavior unless they're stood up to.
Especially considering that we've got this potential summit in September. You know, President Trump has invited Xi Jinping to the United States for a September visit. So that's something else we're going to be watching. Before you go, really quick, I do want to ask you about Ukraine because President Zelensky is set to meet with leaders of the EU today in Paris. He needs more defense support from his Western allies. They're now facing shortages in Kyiv. Russia launched missile and drone attacks on a weapons facility just outside the capital city over the weekend. 8 people were killed, dozens wounded. Ukraine retaliating. They put additional strikes on infrastructure in Russia. They're going after the oil sites. And of course, we just had, you know, Senator Lindsey Graham, his last comments on camera were in Kyiv because he was there meeting with President Zelensky. All of this on the heels of a very violent weekend for the Ukrainians. Your thoughts before we go?
Well, the loss of Senator Lindsey Graham is a huge loss for America, and his departure will be felt, especially on issues like Ukraine, but also China. Right now, after many months of effective new tactics and attacks on Russia's oil refining, it's starting to bite. And I think now we're starting to reach a potential culminating point with the Ukraine war that could see Putin perhaps relent. If the pressure doesn't keep up, Putin is actually making efforts to try to hunker down through the winter and have yet another given that opportunity. But the pressure is required. It's a lot to balance. But I would say that strong American military presence in the Persian Gulf is actually rallying our allies like Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, Kuwait, to actually be more actively involved in pushing back against the threats that we all share. In that case, Iran, but also Russia and China.
Yeah, no, the Wall Street Journal editorial board said that you know, Lindsey Graham's death is a loss for global freedom because he supported Israel. He was supporting the Ukrainians, and he believed in the strength of our military. Brent Sadler, it's great to have you on the program. Thank you for being with me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be right back, everybody.